Commander Taman Park stood in the massive meeting hall of Galactic Council Station Nexus Prime. The circular room was enormous, with seats rising up in layers like an ancient amphitheater. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled those seats, their strange forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes that still amazed him, even after 6 months. Today was important. Today, humanity would present their military technology to the galaxy for the first time since joining this cosmic community. Taman felt the weight of his species' reputation on his shoulders. Beside him, Dr. Sora Kim adjusted her presentation device one more time. She was nervous too, though she tried to hide it. They had practiced this presentation hundreds of times, but presenting to aliens was different from presenting to humans. Members of the Galactic Military Commission, Taman began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. I am Commander Taman Park of the Terran Defense Force. Today we want to share with you one of humanity's most effective weapon systems. A low murmur went through the crowd. The tall, blue-skinned Altarians whispered among themselves. The reptilian Draconians shifted in their seats with obvious interest. Even the gas-form Zephyrians seemed to pulse with curiosity. Chairman Velthar of the Altarians leaned forward in his ornate chair. His silver eyes gleamed as he spoke in his melodic voice. We are eager to learn what the newest members of our community can offer. Please proceed. Sora activated the holographic display. A three-dimensional image of a long, sleek weapon appeared in the center of the room. It looked simple compared to the flowing organic shapes of most alien technology. This is a railgun, Sora explained. It uses electromagnetic fields to accelerate solid projectiles to extreme velocities. The projectiles can reach significant fractions of light speed. The weapon in the hologram began to demonstrate its function. Magnetic coils lit up in sequence, showing how they would push a metal projectile faster and faster down the barrel. Numbers appeared showing velocity calculations and energy requirements. General Kixthon of the Draconian Empire let out what sounded like a laugh. His scales rattled as his massive form shook with amusement. Solid projectiles? You shoot metal at your enemies? Yes, Taman replied calmly. These projectiles carry enormous kinetic energy. They can penetrate most known defensive systems. They produce no energy signature until impact, making them difficult to detect or intercept. Sora brought up more data. Our tests show that railgun projectiles can punch through 3 meters of standard battle armor. They can disable ship engines, breach hulls, and destroy critical systems with pinpoint accuracy. The audience grew quiet as they studied the numbers. Some seemed impressed by the raw power, but others looked confused or dismissive. Velthar's voice carried a tone of polite condescension. This is certainly interesting. Your species has clearly put much effort into perfecting these kinetic weapons. However, I must point out that such approaches are rather antiquated. He gestured elegantly with one long-fingered hand. Our plasma cannons can melt through any armor instantly. Our particle beams can disrupt matter at the molecular level. Why would we need to throw pieces of metal when we can manipulate pure energy? Commander Zethara of the Vegan Confederacy nodded in agreement. Her crystalline form sparkled as she spoke. Our quantum disruptors can phase matter out of existence entirely. Your railguns, while powerful, seem unnecessarily primitive. Taman felt his frustration growing, but he kept his voice level. Respectfully, energy weapons have limitations. They require enormous power generation. They create heat signatures that enemy sensors can easily detect. Most importantly, they can be defended against by energy shields and electromagnetic barriers. But that is exactly why we developed better energy weapons, laughed Kixthan. Our latest plasma cannons can overload any shield system. Our particle beams can bypass electromagnetic defenses entirely. Sora tried a different approach. What we're suggesting is diversification. Energy weapons are excellent, but having kinetic options provides tactical flexibility. There may be situations where electromagnetic acceleration proves more effective than energy projection. The Zephyrian delegate's gaseous form swirled as it communicated through translated thought patterns. We appreciate your historical perspective on warfare. However, our civilizations have evolved beyond such crude methodologies. We have spent millennia perfecting energy manipulation techniques. Taman looked around the room, seeing polite but dismissive expressions on every face. These beings had technology that seemed like magic to humans. Their ships could cross the galaxy in days. Their weapons could destroy planets, yet they couldn't see the simple effectiveness of kinetic force. Consider this, he said, making one final attempt. Your energy weapons require complex targeting systems, enormous power cores, and sophisticated cooling mechanisms. A railgun needs only electromagnetic coils and a solid projectile. It's reliable, simple, and virtually impossible to jam or disable. Velthar smiled, and what humans had learned was the Altarian equivalent of patting someone on the head. Commander Park, your dedication to your species' military traditions is admirable. However, you must understand that we have progressed beyond such methods for good reason. Indeed, added Kixton. Our energy shields can deflect any kinetic weapon you might fire. Our armor plating is designed to absorb and redistribute impact forces. Your railguns would be ineffective against modern defensive systems. The meeting was clearly winding down. Taemin could see it in their body language, in the way attention was drifting. They had made their decision before he even began speaking. Sora made one last attempt. We're not asking you to abandon your current weapons. We're simply suggesting that kinetic systems could supplement energy weapons. In warfare, redundancy and variety are survival advantages. The Zephyrian delegate pulsed again. We thank the Terran representatives for this educational presentation. Your weaponry provides fascinating insight into how civilizations develop military technology during their early spacefaring periods. That stung. Early spacefaring periods, as if humans were children showing off finger paintings to adults. Velthar stood, his graceful movement signaling the end of the session. The Military Commission appreciates humanity's contribution to our knowledge base. However, we must focus our resources on technologies that integrate well with existing galactic defense systems. Of course, we will file your railgun specifications in our historical weapons database, added Kixton. Future military scholars may find them quite interesting when studying the evolution of warfare. As the various representatives began to file out, chatting among themselves in dozens of different languages, Taemin and Sora gathered their materials. The holographic railgun flickered and disappeared. They think we're primitives playing with toys, Sora muttered. Maybe, Taemin replied, but toys can be dangerous when used correctly. They walked through the gleaming corridors of Nexus Prime toward their transport. The station was a marvel of alien engineering, with gravity fields that shifted smoothly from deck to deck and walls that seemed to be made of liquid light. Do you think we're wrong? Sora asked quietly. Maybe kinetic weapons really are obsolete. These civilizations have been fighting wars in space for thousands of years. Taemin paused at a viewport that showed the vast emptiness of space beyond the station. Stars glittered like diamonds against the black void. Somewhere out there, humanity's small fleet of ships waited for their return. I don't think we're wrong, he said finally. I think they've forgotten something important about warfare. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. Sometimes old methods work better than new ones. As their transport prepared to depart, neither Taemin nor Sora noticed the strange readings on the station's deep space sensors. Far at the edge of galactic space, something was moving. Something that had been dormant for a very long time was beginning to wake up. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about the value of simple, effective weapons. 3 months had passed since the presentation at Nexus Prime, and Jinwoo Lee was having a peaceful morning on Kepler 442b. The mining colony was small but prosperous, with about 15,000 residents from various species working together to extract rare minerals from the planet's crust. Jinwoo stood on the observation deck of the administration building, watching the sunrise paint the alien landscape in shades of purple and gold. As the colony's administrator, mornings like this reminded him why he had taken this job. After years of bureaucratic work on Earth, managing a frontier colony felt refreshing. His peaceful moment was interrupted by Mi-young Choi, who burst through the door with a worried expression. Mi-young worked for Terran Intelligence, though officially she was just a cultural liaison officer, helping various species adapt to life on a human-administered world. Jinwoo, we have a problem, she said breathlessly. The deep space sensors are picking up massive signatures at the system's edge. Something big is coming. Jinwoo frowned and followed her to the communications center. The main screen showed sensor readings that made no sense. The objects were huge, larger than any ships in the galactic registry, and they moved in ways that defied understanding. How many? Jinwoo asked. At least 40 contacts, maybe more. They're coming straight for us and they don't match any known ship designs. Within an hour, the objects were close enough for visual contact. Jinwoo stared at the screen in shock. The ships, if they could be called ships, looked organic. They resembled enormous sea creatures made of dark metal and pulsing with strange lights. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. "I've sent emergency signals to the Galactic Defense Fleet," Mi-young reported. "Admiral Keithvar's task force is 2 hours away." Jin-Woo nodded and activated the colony's emergency systems. Alarms began wailing across the settlement as he announced the evacuation order. 15,000 beings needed to be loaded onto transport ships and moved to safety before whatever these things were arrived. The evacuation was chaotic, but organized. Humans worked alongside Altarians, Draconians, and dozens of other species to load families and essential equipment onto every available ship. Jin-Woo coordinated from the command center, watching as the unknown vessels drew closer. When Admiral Keithvar's fleet arrived, Jin-Woo felt a surge of relief. The Altarian fleet was magnificent, with sleek white ships that gleamed like pearls against the stars. Keithvar's flagship was a massive dreadnought equipped with the most advanced plasma cannons in the galaxy. "Colony Administrator Lee," Keithvar's voice came through the communicator, musical and confident like all Altarian speech. "Please continue your evacuation. We will handle these intruders." The fleet moved into attack formation with graceful precision. Jin-Woo watched from his command center as the Altarian ships opened fire. Brilliant streams of plasma erupted from their weapons, lighting up space like artificial suns. The plasma bolts struck the organic-looking ships directly. Jin-Woo expected to see explosions and debris. Instead, something impossible happened. The strange vessels seemed to absorb the plasma beams, their hulls growing brighter and larger as they consumed the energy. "What the hell?" Mi-young whispered. Admiral Keithvar's voice came through the comm again, but now it carried uncertainty. "Increasing power to weapons. All ships focus fire on the lead vessel." The entire fleet unleashed their full firepower. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum disruptors created a light show that could be seen from the planet's surface. The energy striking the alien ships was enough to vaporize a small moon, but the ships kept growing. They were feeding on the energy weapons, becoming stronger with every shot. "Admiral, recommend switching to kinetic weapons," Mi-young transmitted urgently. "We don't carry kinetic weapons," came the reply. "Such systems are considered obsolete." The alien ships began to respond. Dark beams erupted from their hulls, striking the Altarian vessels. Wherever the beams touched, ship systems began failing. Lights went out, engines sputtered, and weapons fell silent. It was as if the alien beams drained all energy from whatever they hit. Jin-Woo watched in horror as the beautiful Altarian ships began to crumble. Their advanced hulls, designed to deflect energy weapons, seemed to dissolve under the alien attack. Secondary explosions rippled through the fleet as power cores overloaded and life support systems failed. "All ships retreat immediately," Admiral Keithvar ordered, but it was too late for many. More than half his fleet was already dead in space. The organic ships released clouds of something that looked like metallic fog. The clouds drifted toward the disabled Altarian vessels and began eating through their hulls like acid through paper. Within minutes, the mighty dreadnought was being consumed from the outside in. "Jin-Woo, we need to go now," Mi-young urged. "The last transports are loading." Jin-Woo made the hardest decision of his career. There were still 3,000 colonists on the planet's surface, but staying would mean everyone would die. "Launch all ships," he ordered. "Emergency burn to the jump point." As their convoy of human cargo ships fled the system, Jin-Woo looked back at the battle. The remaining Altarian ships were fighting desperately, but their energy weapons were useless. Every shot they fired only made their enemies stronger. Then something unexpected happened. One of the human cargo ships, an old freighter called the Steady Eddie, was attacked by small alien fighters. The freighter's captain activated its point defense system, ancient kinetic weapons that most galactic citizens would consider primitive. The rapid-fire projectile cannons tore through the alien fighters like paper. The small organic craft, which had easily absorbed plasma fire, were shredded by simple metal bullets moving at high speed. "Did you see that?" Mi-young shouted over the comm. "The kinetic weapons work." But it was too late to save the fleet. Admiral Keithvar's final transmission was filled with static and desperation. "Unknown enemy immune to energy weapons. Repeat, energy weapons ineffective. They're absorbing our fire and growing stronger. Send warning to all systems. These things eat energy." The transmission cut off as the flagship was consumed by the metallic fog. Jinwoo's convoy made it to the jump point and escaped to hyperspace. But behind them, Kepler 442b was burning. The alien ships had moved into orbit and were systematically destroying everything on the planet's surface with their energy-draining beams. In the cargo hold of Jinwoo's command ship, refugees from dozens of species huddled together in fear. They had lost their homes, their possessions, and many had lost family members. But they were alive, and they carried crucial information. "We need to get word to the Galactic Council immediately," Mi-young said as she compiled her intelligence report. "These aren't random pirates or terrorists. This is an organized invasion by something that's specifically designed to counter our current military technology." Jinwoo nodded grimly, and the only weapons that worked against them were the ones everyone called obsolete. As their ship jumped through hyperspace toward the galactic core, emergency broadcasts were already spreading the news. The outer rim colony of Kepler 442b had been destroyed by unknown attackers. An entire Altarian battle fleet had been lost. The enemy was immune to energy weapons. In the depths of space, more organic ships were emerging from dark corners of the galaxy. They moved with purpose, heading toward populated systems. After sleeping for 1,000 years, the Devourers had returned, and they were hungry for the energy that powered galactic civilization. The galaxy's greatest military minds would soon realize that their most advanced weapons were useless. The technology they had spent centuries perfecting was actually making their enemies stronger. In the coming days, desperate calls would go out to every military archive, searching for alternatives. And in those archives, buried under files marked as historical curiosities and obsolete systems, someone would find the specifications for human railguns. The weapons everyone had dismissed as primitive were about to become the galaxy's last hope. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives who normally spent months debating trade regulations had gathered in hours. The Great Chamber buzzed with panic as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. President Sung-Ho Yoon of the Terran Federation sat quietly among the chaos, watching alien dignitaries who had seemed so confident just months ago. Now they looked terrified and desperate. 17 star systems had fallen in the past week. Every military response had ended in disaster. Chairman Velthar stood at the central podium, his usual grace replaced by barely controlled fear. His silver skin had lost its natural glow, and his melodic voice cracked as he spoke. "The situation is beyond critical," Velthar announced. "Our most advanced fleets have been destroyed. Our energy weapons not only fail to harm these invaders, they actually make them stronger. We are facing extinction." Admiral Zarthok of the Vegan Confederacy slammed his crystalline fist on his desk, creating a sound like breaking glass. "How is this possible? Our weapons can destroy planets. Our shields can stop anything. Everything except simple kinetic force," said a quiet voice from the human section. All eyes turned to Dr. Jun-Sik Han, humanity's leading expert on electromagnetic warfare. He was a small man who looked uncomfortable being the center of attention, but his voice was steady. These Devourers, as survivors are calling them, evolved to counter energy weapons. Their bioadaptive hulls can absorb and redirect almost any form of energy attack. But they never developed defenses against simple kinetic impact. Velthar's expression was painful to watch. "Are you saying that your railguns, the weapons we dismissed, are our only hope?" "Not just railguns," President Sung-Ho replied as he stood up. "Any kinetic weapon system. Mass drivers, coil guns, even old-fashioned chemical projectiles. The Devourers can't adapt to simple physics." The chamber erupted in discussions as the full implications hit them. Species that had spent millennia perfecting energy manipulation were being told their salvation lay in throwing rocks at their enemies. Fleet Admiral He-jin Bei activated a holographic display showing the current military situation. Red zones marked fallen systems, while yellow areas showed Devourer forces advancing toward the galactic core. "The problem is scale," she explained. "Humanity has maybe 200 ships equipped with railgun systems. The Devourers have thousands of vessels. Even if our weapons are effective, we're vastly outnumbered. So we build more kinetic weapons," suggested Commander Yethral of the Altarian Defense Force. "How difficult can it be to manufacture simple projectile systems?" Dr. Han pulled up technical specifications. "Railguns aren't as simple as they look. You need precise electromagnetic coils, massive power capacitors, and extremely durable barrel assemblies. Building a single railgun system takes months with proper facilities. Then we convert existing ships, Admiral Zarthok declared. Strip out the energy weapons and install kinetic systems. That would take years, Heejin replied. And most alien ship designs can't handle the power. Requirements or structural stress of railgun systems without major hull modifications. The discussions grew heated as various species argued about resource allocation and manufacturing priorities. Time was running out and traditional solutions seemed impossible. President Sung Ho raised his hand for silence. There might be another way. Instead of converting your ships, we mass-produce human-designed weapon modules that can be mounted on existing alien vessels. He gestured to Heejin, who brought up new schematics. External railgun pods. Each pod contains a complete weapon system with its own power supply and targeting computer. They can be attached to any ship's hardpoint connectors. The design was surprisingly elegant. The pods looked like elongated teardrops that could be bolted onto a ship's hull. Inside each pod was a compact railgun, with automated loading systems and enough power for sustained combat. We estimate each pod can fire continuously for 30 minutes before needing to reload, Dr. Han explained. A typical battlecruiser could mount 20 pods without affecting its flight characteristics. Velthar studied the specifications with growing hope. How quickly can these be produced? That's the beautiful part, President Sung Ho smiled. We're not building complete ship weapons. We're building standardized modules. Every human shipyard, mining platform, and manufacturing station is being converted to pod production. The scale of the operation was staggering. Across human space, asteroid mining ships were being fitted with industrial fabricators. Space stations that normally processed raw materials were retooled for weapons manufacturing. Even civilian factories were being converted. We'll also need to train your crews, Heejin added. Kinetic weapons require different tactics than energy systems. Your gunners need to learn about projectile travel time, gravity effects, and target leading. Admiral Zarthok's crystalline form brightened with interest. Send us your best instructors. We'll establish training centers on every major military base. Over the following days, the galaxy transformed into a massive war factory. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians to streamline production processes. Altarian manufacturing skills combined with draconian metallurgy to create railgun components. Zephyrian quantum computing helped optimize targeting systems. The first test came sooner than expected. A Devourer scouting force attacked the Proxima system, where a prototype defense fleet waited. The fleet consisted of alien ships covered in the new human-designed weapon pods, looking like metal porcupines bristling with railgun barrels. Captain Dong Hyun Seo commanded the experimental ship Indomitable, the first vessel designed from the ground up around kinetic weapons. His crew included the best human gunners and several alien officers learning the new combat methods. When the Devourers attacked, their bioships began their usual energy absorption tactics. But instead of plasma beams, they were met with streams of tungsten projectiles traveling at 15% of light speed. The effect was devastating. Devourer hulls that easily absorbed gigawatts of energy were punctured by simple metal rods. Their bioadaptive armor, evolved to redistribute energy, couldn't handle kinetic impact. Projectiles punched clean through their ships and continued into space. It's working, Captain Seo reported over the battle network. Railguns are tearing them apart. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. Every Devourer ship was destroyed without losing a single Alliance vessel. For the first time since the invasion began, the galaxy had scored a victory. News of the success spread quickly, spurring production efforts to new heights. Alien crews trained frantically on kinetic weapon systems. Engineers worked around the clock to improve pod designs and increase manufacturing speed. But intelligence reports brought sobering news. The main Devourer fleet was massive, containing millions of bioships centered around something called the Apex. Long-range sensors showed it moving steadily toward the galactic core, consuming everything in its path. We're buying time, President Sung Ho told the Emergency Council. Every day we delay them, more ships get equipped with kinetic weapons. But we need to be realistic. Even with railguns, we're facing overwhelming numbers. Velthar, who had undergone a complete transformation from his earlier arrogance, now spoke with humble determination. Then we make every shot count. We use human tactics and human weapons, but we fight with the courage of every species in the galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same civilizations that had dismissed human weapons as primitive were now depending on those weapons for survival. The obsolete railguns were the galaxy's most valuable technology. As production ramped up and training continued, one thing became clear. When the final battle came, it would be fought with human weapons and human tactics. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were learning warfare from the species they had considered militarily backward. The Devourers were coming, but this time, the galaxy would be ready. Captain Donghyun Seo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the swirling gases of the Helix Nebula stretch across the viewscreen. Somewhere in those colorful clouds, the Devourers had built their forward base. Intelligence suggested thousands of bioships were gathering there, preparing for their final assault on the galactic core. "All stations report ready, sir," announced Naeun Park from the tactical station. She was young for such an important position, but her father had trained her well. Commander Tae-min Park's daughter had inherited his strategic mind and his stubborn determination. "Engineering reports all railgun systems online," added Chief Byung-soo Kim. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had spent months perfecting the ship's weapon systems. "Power levels are optimal, and we have full ammunition loads." The Indomitable was humanity's newest warship, designed specifically for kinetic combat. Unlike the converted alien vessels with their external weapon pods, every system on the ship was built around railgun technology. Her hull was thick enough to handle recoil forces, her power grid could charge multiple weapons simultaneously, and her targeting computers were programmed for kinetic warfare. "Commander Yethral, how are your crew adapting to the new tactics?" Dong-hyun asked the Altarian first officer. Yethral's silver features showed concentration as he studied the tactical displays. "It is different from what we learned at the academy. Energy weapons are elegant, precise. These kinetic systems require more brutality." "That's the point," Naeun replied. "Sometimes brutality is more effective than elegance." The combined fleet was the largest gathering of warships in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species had been retrofitted with human weapon pods. Draconian battlecruisers bristled with railgun barrels. Altarian destroyers looked like metal hedgehogs covered in projectile launchers. Even the graceful Zephyrian vessels had been modified with kinetic systems. "All ships, this is Fleet Command," came the voice of Admiral Hee-jin Bae over the communication system. "Intelligence confirms major Devourer presence in the nebula. This is our chance to strike before they complete their preparations." The fleet moved into the nebula like a massive spear thrust. The Indomitable led the human contingent, while alien ships formed supporting formations. Everyone had trained for this moment, but training was different from actual combat. "Contact," Naeun called out. Multiple Devourer bioships emerging from the gas clouds. Countess, dear God, there are hundreds of them. The enemy vessels seemed to materialize from the nebula itself. Their organic hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and they moved with the fluid grace of living creatures. Some were small and quick like fighter craft, while others were massive things that dwarfed even the largest alliance ships. "All ships engage at will," Admiral Hyojin ordered. "Remember your training. Lead your targets and fire for center mass." The battle began with a thunderous barrage of railgun fire. Thousands of tungsten projectiles streaked through space at incredible velocities. The Devourers, expecting energy weapons they could absorb, were caught completely off guard. The first wave of kinetic projectiles tore through their bioships like bullets through paper. Hulls that could deflect plasma beams were punctured by simple metal rods. Secondary explosions rippled through Devourer formations as their organic systems were shredded. "Direct hit on the large bioship," Byung-soo reported with satisfaction. Railgun effectiveness confirmed at 95%. But the Devourers adapted quickly. Their remaining ships began evasive maneuvers, using their organic flexibility to twist and writhe through space. They couldn't absorb kinetic projectiles, but they could try to avoid them. "They're learning," Commander Yethral observed. "Their movement patterns are becoming unpredictable." "Then we adapt too," Dong-hyun replied. "Naeun, switch to proximity rounds. Byung-soo, prepare the fragment shells." The Alliance fleet changed tactics. Instead of firing solid projectiles, they began using shells filled with tungsten fragments. When these rounds detonated near Devourer ships, they created clouds of high-velocity shrapnel that were impossible to evade. The effect was devastating. Devourer fighter swarms that could dodge individual projectiles were shredded by fragment clouds. Their bioships, evolved for energy absorption, had no defense against thousands of tiny metal pieces moving at tremendous speed. Fragment effectiveness confirmed, Nayun reported. Enemy fighter strength down 60%. The larger Devourer ships tried to respond with their energy-draining weapons, but the Alliance had learned from previous battles. Ships stayed in constant motion, never presenting steady targets. When Devourer beams did connect, they found that kinetic-focused vessels had much simpler systems that were harder to disable. Energy drain attack on the port quarter, Yethral announced, compensating with backup power systems. That's why we keep it simple, Byung-Soo explained as he rerouted power through mechanical systems. Hard to drain energy from systems that barely use any. The battle reached its climax when the massive Devourer command ship emerged from the nebula's deepest regions. The biovessel was enormous, easily a kilometer long, with organic towers and weapon clusters covering its hull. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed across its surface like a living heartbeat. That's their flagship, Admiral Haijin's voice came over the comm. All ships focus fire on the command vessel. Bring it down and the others will scatter. Every railgun in the fleet turned toward the massive bioship. The combined barrage was incredible, thousands of projectiles converging on a single target. But the command ship was different from the others. Its hull was thicker, more resilient, and it had defensive systems the smaller ships lacked. Organic tentacles erupted from the command ship's hull, intercepting incoming projectiles. The tentacles couldn't stop the railgun rounds, but they could deflect some of them. Other defensive systems created clouds of organic matter that absorbed some kinetic energy. It's adapting to kinetic weapons, Nyan reported with concern. Hull integrity is still high despite multiple hits. Dong-Hyun made a command decision. All power to forward railguns. Byung-Soo, prepare the experimental synchronization system. The synchronization system was untested in combat, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Instead of firing independently, every railgun on the Indomitable would fire simultaneously, creating a concentrated kinetic impact that nothing could survive. Synchronization ready, Byung-Soo reported. Warning, this will drain our entire power grid. Do it. The Indomitable's railguns fired as one, sending a concentrated stream of projectiles directly at the command ship's center mass. The combined kinetic energy was equivalent to a small asteroid impact. When the projectiles hit, the effect was spectacular. The command ship's biohull cracked like an eggshell. Internal explosions rippled through its organic structure as vital systems were destroyed. The massive vessel began to list, its bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying. "Command ship is down," Nayun shouted in triumph. "Enemy formation is breaking apart." She was right. With their flagship destroyed, the remaining Devourer ships lost coordination. Some fled deeper into the nebula, while others attacked wildly without strategy. The Alliance fleet systematically hunted down the scattered bioships, their kinetic weapons proving effective against every enemy vessel. The battle ended with complete victory for the Alliance. Not a single Devourer ship escaped, and Allied losses were minimal. The Helix Nebula, which had been a staging area for invasion, was now clear of enemy forces. "Outstanding work, all ships," Admiral Haijin announced. "This proves our kinetic weapons can defeat the Devourers decisively." But even in victory, sobering news came from long-range sensors. The main Devourer fleet was still approaching the galactic core, and it was massive beyond imagination. Intelligence estimates suggested millions of bioships centered around something called the Apex. This was just their advance guard, Dong-Hyun told his crew. The real battle is still coming. Commander Yethral had been quiet during the celebration, studying tactical reports. Finally, he spoke with newfound respect in his voice. "I understand now why humans focus on kinetic weapons. Energy is elegant, but kinetic force is certain. When you hit something with enough mass at sufficient velocity, it breaks. There is no adaptation to simple physics. The victory at Helix Nebula gave the galaxy hope, but everyone knew the final test was still ahead. The apex was coming, and, when it arrived, every railgun in the galaxy would be needed for humanity's greatest battle. The massive fleet gathered near Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy. Ships from every known species formed the largest military formation in galactic history. Millions of vessels, all equipped with human-designed kinetic weapons, waited in the gravitational shadow of humanity's most audacious plan. Fleet Admiral Min-Seok Kang stood in the command center of the super dreadnought Unity, a ship built by combining the best technology from every galactic civilization. The vessel was enormous, bristling with thousands of railgun systems and powered by revolutionary fusion cores designed by human and alien engineers working together. Final count. Admiral reported his aide. 4.7 million combat vessels, all equipped with kinetic weapons. Every major shipyard in the galaxy has been working non-stop for 3 months. Min-Seok nodded grimly. The numbers were impressive, but intelligence reports suggested the approaching Devourer fleet was even larger. At its center was the Apex, a bioconstruct so massive it registered as a small moon on their sensors. Dr. Yunji, are the gravitational railguns ready? Min-Seok asked the brilliant physicist who had designed their most ambitious weapon system. Dr. Yunji Lim looked exhausted, but determined. She had spent weeks calculating how to use the black hole's immense gravity to accelerate projectiles to previously impossible velocities. The gravitational slingshot launchers are operational. We can accelerate tungsten rods to 80% of light speed. The concept was insane but scientifically sound. By launching projectiles toward the black hole's event horizon and using precisely calculated gravitational assists, they could achieve velocities that would make even the smallest projectile devastating. At near light speed, a tungsten rod would carry enough kinetic energy to shatter a small planet. Contact at the system edge, announced the sensor operator. The Apex is here. The view screen showed something that defied comprehension. The Apex wasn't just a large bioship, it was an entire ecosystem. Millions of Devourer vessels swarmed around a central organism that was truly moon-sized. The thing pulsed with organic rhythms, its surface covered in biomechanical structures that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. Mother of God, whispered Chairman Velthar, who had insisted on joining the final battle. How do we fight something that big? The same way we've been fighting them, Min-Seok replied, with kinetic force and human stubbornness. As the Devourer fleet approached, their intentions became clear. The bioships weren't just coming to attack, they were coming to feed. Every piece of technology in the galaxy, every power source and energy system was food for their endless hunger. They had consumed entire civilizations before, and they intended to do it again. All ships, this is Fleet Command, Min-Seok announced to the entire galactic fleet. Today we fight not just for our individual species, but for the right of intelligent life to exist in this galaxy. The enemy before us has devoured civilizations for millions of years. Today that ends. The battle began with long-range kinetic bombardment. Thousands of ships fired simultaneously, sending streams of projectiles toward the Devourer swarm. At such distances, even railgun rounds took time to reach their targets. But when they arrived, the effect was devastating. Devourer bioships that had grown enormous by absorbing energy were vulnerable to kinetic impact. Their organic hulls evolved to redirect energy attacks, cracked and shattered under projectile bombardment. Entire sections of the enemy fleet were destroyed in the first exchange, but the Apex itself seemed unaffected. The moon-sized organism had bioarmor that was incredibly thick, and defensive systems that could intercept many incoming projectiles. Its surface was covered with organic tentacles that moved like anti-aircraft guns, destroying incoming rounds before they could penetrate the main hull. Conventional kinetic weapons aren't effective against the Apex, Dr. Yunji reported. Its defensive systems are too sophisticated. Then we try the gravitational railguns, Min-Seok decided. All ships clear the firing corridor. Prepare for maximum velocity launch. The gravitational railgun system was built into the Unity itself. Massive electromagnetic coils ran the entire length of the super dreadnought, creating a launch system over 2 kilometers long. The projectile was a specially designed tungsten rod, reinforced with quantum-stabilized matter to survive near light speed impact. Gravitational calculations confirmed, Dr. Yunji announced. Trajectory plotted for maximum acceleration through the black hole's gravitational field. Lieutenant Ji-hoon, you're our best pilot, Min-seok said to the young officer at the targeting station. Guide that projectile true. The entire galaxy is counting on you. Lieutenant Ji-hoon Choi was barely 25 years old, but he had trained for this moment his entire career. His hands moved over the targeting controls with steady precision, calculating the complex trajectory needed to use Sagittarius A as a gravitational accelerator. Firing solution locked, Ji-hoon reported. Gravitational railgun ready. Fire. The Unity's massive railgun system discharged with a force that shook the entire super dreadnought. The tungsten projectile shot toward the black hole at tremendous velocity, following a precisely calculated path that would use the gravitational field to accelerate it even further. The projectile disappeared into the distorted space around Sagittarius A, then emerged on a new trajectory aimed directly at the apex. But now it was moving at 80% of light speed, carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a large nuclear weapon. The apex's defensive systems detected the incoming projectile, but at near light speed there was no time to intercept it. The tungsten rod struck the bioconstruct's surface with force beyond imagination. The impact was visible from across the system. A massive explosion erupted from the apex's surface, tearing through bioarmor that had withstood millions of years of warfare. The organism's bioluminescent patterns flickered and died as vital systems were destroyed. Direct hit, Ji-hoon shouted in triumph. The apex is damaged. But the ancient organism wasn't finished. It had survived for billions of years by adapting to every threat, and even this devastating blow wasn't immediately fatal. Biomechanical repair systems began sealing the wound, while the creature's consciousness reached out to coordinate a desperate counterattack. The remaining Devourer fleet, driven by the apex's pain and fury, launched a suicidal assault on the Galactic fleet. Bioships that had been careful and tactical before now attacked with mindless aggression. They had nothing left to lose. All ships stand fast, Min-seok ordered. They're desperate now. Hold formation and keep firing. The battle became a grinding match of attrition. Galactic ships used their kinetic weapons to destroy wave after wave of Devourer attackers, while the bioships tried to get close enough to use their energy-draining weapons. But the Alliance had learned from earlier battles. Their ships were designed to operate with minimal energy systems, making them harder to disable. Chairman Velthar, manning a weapon station despite his status as a political leader, fought with desperate courage alongside human gunners. We're holding them, he called out. The kinetic weapons are working. The tide turned when Dr. Yoonji made a crucial observation. Admiral, the Apex is trying to regenerate, but it's pulling energy from the smaller bioships. If we can force it to keep healing, it might drain its entire fleet. Continuous bombardment, Min-seok ordered. Every ship with gravitational railgun capability, fire at will. Keep hitting the apex faster than it can heal. Ship after ship fired near-light-speed projectiles at the massive bioconstruct. Each impact caused tremendous damage, forcing the apex to divert energy from its fleet to repair itself. The smaller Devourer ships began to weaken as their life force was drained to heal their master. Lieutenant Ji-hoon guided projectile after projectile with deadly precision. His targeting skills, honed through months of training, made every shot count. The young pilot had become humanity's greatest weapon against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. The apex is failing, Dr. Yoonji announced. Its biosigns are becoming erratic. The end came suddenly. After absorbing dozens of near-light-speed impacts, the ancient organism finally reached its limits. Its regeneration systems collapsed, its consciousness fragmented, and its massive biomechanical body began to break apart. The death of the apex had an immediate effect on the Devourer fleet. Without their guiding intelligence, the bioships lost coordination. Some fled in random directions, while others simply shut down as their controlling consciousness died. All enemy vessels are retreating or dead in space, the sensor operator reported. We've won, Admiral. The galaxy is saved. The celebration that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Ships from every species fired celebratory rounds into space, while communications channels filled with cheers in dozens of languages. The ancient enemy that had haunted galactic nightmares for millions of years was finally defeated. But as the victory celebration continued, Min-seok found himself standing with Velthar on the observation deck of the Unity. The Altarian leader looked out at the debris field where the apex had died, his expression thoughtful. "We were fools," Veltar said quietly. "When your people warned us about kinetic weapons, we dismissed them as primitive. We nearly doomed ourselves through arrogance. Everyone makes mistakes."